Parenting is hard. It can also be rewarding, but getting through the grind to the good stuff can be a real struggle. And all of us could use some inspiration, encouragement, or just a reminder that we aren't alone on this journey. Sometimes even parents need a timeout.
Hi, welcome to Parents Time Out. This is the time during the week where we gather with other parents and we share ideas, we ask questions, and we learn from each other because we want to fight isolation because we know that parenting is done best in community. So thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Kim Botto. I lead kids and students at Crossroads, and I'm also a mom and a grandma. And unfortunately, everyone knows we are still in the midst of a pandemic. And kids are going back to school, but it looks really different. And due to quarantine and shutdown, all of us, even our kids, have had to deal with grief over event cancellations, not as much time with our friends, and so much more. And recent surveys have shown that, and this will be no surprise to anybody, Americans are reporting significant and sustained increases in symptoms of depression and anxiety, all related to COVID-19. And many are reporting higher rates of fear and anxiety, more than ever before. So as parents, we've got our own big feelings, which makes it sometimes feel overwhelming to even think about helping our kids navigate their feelings. I know that's hard for me. So tonight, we're joined by a clinical counselor and my friend, Brian Spears. Brian is the dad of 2 teenagers and an adult son. He's married to Wendy, who I love. He's on staff at Crossroads. He's also a counselor at Learn to Thrive. And Brian recently walked our whole staff team, through an exercise to deal with some of the stuff, grief and anxiety and sadness that we picked up during COVID. And when we heard him do that, we're all going, oh, we need to get him on Parents Time Out. So Brian, thank you for helping me with some of my big feelings. And we're glad to have you here tonight. To get started, we're going to ask you a question as people are popping on.
Right.
And as people are popping on, go ahead and put your questions in the comments now. But Brian, I'd love to know, since you're a counselor, some people might think that you have it all together. I'd love to know, I bet you've had some challenges during COVID. What's something challenging you've had to deal with?
Well, I could probably tick off a list of things. The first couple of weeks, when the kids came home from school and we realized they weren't going to be going back for 6 weeks and right up through summer, we got busy trying to figure out how to set new rhythms and to create. For me, I was just a little worried about how they were doing. So early in the quarantine, we got really good at spending a lot more time together. It went really well. When things started to go sideways was about mid-July.
Yeah.
After we had all been kind of quarantined up really tightly, and then the governor said, hey, you can go back to restaurants and do your thing. So we kind of broke out a little bit, and then it got tighter again. And then you starting to look at the fact that, what school may not look like I want it to for my kids. And the very thing that I talked with our staff at Crossroads about related to depression and anxiety, I started feeling some of those symptoms myself and realized that, we're going to be in this for quite a while. It may get a little worse before it gets better. And only recently have I started putting healthy patterns back into place. I'm very much a creature of habit. Pre-COVID, up at 5 o'clock, I like to gym early. I would do those things. Here we are looking at September 2nd. I put on about 10 pounds because the gym is out. I have, I'm very much a person who lives by a schedule. I have missed garbage day on my street more in the past 5 months than I have in the 30 years I've been a functioning adult. Just because my pattern's all out of whack. So, that
Yeah, we have a
the loss of just normal rhythms has really done a number on me.
Right. We have a neighbor who puts on a dry erase board, says Happy Tuesday, Happy Wednesday. And it's so great because it's very hard to know what day it is. I've heard more people miss garbage, but not on our street. We know what day it is.
Okay.
So we're going to, Brian, I know we have parents. I think we've already got some questions out there for you. But I just want to start with, so we heard the statistics. People are having a hard time right now. And you spoke a little bit to your rhythms being out of whack, but why are we having such a hard time in the midst of this pandemic?
Well, there are three things that I would highlight. One, the fancy kind of psychological term for it, or our internal regulators are off, meaning we kind of set our day by alarm clock, coffee maker goes off, have to get kids to school by 8 o'clock. All of a sudden, all of those things are upended. And they have a direct effect on our capacity. Another thing that directly affects our capacity is, just the very nature of being told on the nightly news and daily, if you tune into any kind of social media, that your interaction with another human being could potentially be fatal, or at least get you really sick. We all fall in a spectrum as to how we feel about the current state of COVID world. Some people believe it's just this side of a hoax. Some people believe that, and others believe that it's an absolute life threat to life and a potentially fatal circumstance. And for some, it is. So that's a pretty serious thing that we deal with daily, regardless of where you fall in there. You have to deal with it. And then the third thing would be because of the second thing, we are told wear the mask, and instead of being in proximity to other human beings, which we need to stay healthy, to be around people and to react to them, 90% of our communication is cut off. We know that our communication is the majority of it is nonverbal. So you wear a mask or you do your work through a Zoom call all day long. It really takes a toll on our relationships, on our ability to have capacity for the normal things that we try to get done, such as caring for kids, spending time with spouses or partners, and just our normal functionality. Those are three biggies.
Yeah, so you're saying that just because we're not seeing faces like we used to, and we're not as in close proximity to people, that actually lowers our capacity to deal with kids who can be frustrating, and that's part of why we have shorter fuses?
Yeah, I have an example of it today. Earlier today, today's Wednesday. 6 months ago, I would have been at my job, and my daughter Nora would be at her school. Today, at around 1 o'clock, she came down and said, "Dad, I need help with the test she was working on." And I was busy making lunch. I said, "Okay, just have a seat there. What question are we working on?" And it instantly went from a very kind little request to frustration. It went completely sideways, and she got frustrated with me. I got frustrated with her. Why? One, it's a weird circumstance. Neither one of us should be home at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday.
Right.
In normal world. But here we are. She's working on schoolwork from home. I'm working on my job from home. So when those things come together, and we're resilient people. Everybody on this call has got a level of resiliency, and everybody taking part in this evening has experienced something like I described with my daughter. It's a short fuse, and you shouldn't beat yourself up over it.
Yes, grace.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of grace.
A lot of grace.
you talked earlier about fears and stuff. Dawn has a question that she's asking about fear and anxiety. She said, I've had several parents reach out whose kids, like 7 to 10-year-olds, are struggling with fear and anxiety. So what are some recommendations that you have for parents trying to help their kids navigate this?
Yes. Well, that's a tough one. Those are young. The ages indicated there, 7 and 10 years old. That's young, and they're going to react at that age. Kids are reactive, and they're going to whenever they present what looks like fear and anxiety. The number one tool we have immediately is to listen, to stop and listen. And it's a tough thing to do because sometimes as a parent, you feel like, oh, do I want to affirm a feeling, because they're going to be sharing their feelings, their thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and it comes out as anxious. There could be some tears or anger. Oh, do I want to affirm a feeling that I don't necessarily agree? Like it's not as bad as they're making it out. That's my inner monologue.
Right.
But the number one thing I want to identify is, oh, you really miss your friends. What you're sharing, the anxiety, the fear you're sharing, you're concerned you may not be going back to school soon. I bet you miss your friends. So to stop and pause and to get a good sense of what's the emotion that they're expressing? Is it anger? Is it fear? We use words like anxiety to kind of describe all kinds of emotions that come bubbling out. That's okay. That's not a problem. But if we can dig a little deeper, and the digging is actually it's passive work. I'm just going to listen. I'm going to listen while my child shares what they're feeling. Now,
and then refer back to them, helping them name those emotions.
Yeah, and in fact, yeah, that is the skill that you're utilizing is reflective listening. So, for example, if a son or daughter, 7 to 10 years old, seems really frustrated, and you're able to have a conversation about it, you seem really frustrated right now. What's going on? And then to allow them time to emote and share what they're dealing with.
Yeah, and I found sometimes when I give them, they say, name it to tame it. And I find that sometimes I think my kid is mad. I'll say, you seem really mad about, they'll go, no, I'm not mad. I'm just, I feel left out. So I think that helps a lot. That's a great question, Dawn. Thank you.
One more word on that. What I had to learn with that name it to tame it idea is you don't have to get it right whenever you're trying to name the emotion. You can say, like your example, Kim, you seem really mad. They're going to tell you, no, I'm not mad. I'm frustrated or I'm disappointed. Okay, that's an important step because now you've created a conversation.
Right. Yeah. And their feelings are their feelings. It's not up to us to say whether they're valid or not.
Yeah.
Aaron has a question that we're going to pop up here. Practical rhythms you've developed as a family to grow your kids to be emotionally healthy.
Mm-hmm. A practical rhythm that I put in place, we don't do it anymore with this level of regularity, but when my kids were, from Dawn's example, very young, even younger, from kindergarten up until they were in the 7th and 8th grade, and my son is just now finishing up his 8th grade year, I realized quickly that the dinner hour would soon become a lot more difficult to nail as far as a family meal. So I rearranged my work schedule and figured out a way to make sure that I would be present with my wife and kids in the morning. And I called it the morning meeting. And we would meet for breakfast every morning, 5 days a week, a hot breakfast. I say that, if it's cereal, that's okay, but I wanted to make it the special meal of the day because as my kids got older, they were doing sports or they had to do something else. So to have one or two rocks in the river, when you're a kid playing in the woods and you're trying to cross a creek, there are touchstones. You know that you're going to safely make it through. So there are one or two rocks in the river to cross a difficult path. I wanted one or two rocks in the river every day and touch points that we would be coming back together, and that I knew my kids could count on and my wife could count on, that we would be able to be supportive of each other. I think that went a long way to create not only safe spaces, but also internal regulators, parts of the day and the week that everybody can count on,
right?
That are predictable.
Right.
Kids thrive in structure.
They
want, whether or not they tell you this, they really want structure.
They do, and I love the just the tangible thought of we're putting those rocks in the river to bring us back together. We've got another question from Abby.
Okay.
This is, a lot of us are here when we're not at 100% and are struggling with all kinds of hardships. How do we model authenticity while not scaring our kids or projecting?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a really good question. It's an important question. Projecting is bad. We don't want to do that.
Now, when you say projecting is bad, give me an example of what that would look like.
Okay, so projecting is, so in an adult relationship, projecting, it looks like if I'm angry about something, and I go to my wife Wendy and I say, "Well, you seem angry," and I'm projecting my own emotions on her, and of course she's going to be like, "What are you talking about? You're the one that seems angry." That can happen. I've projected. I mean, that we do that. We're fallible people, but we want to be aware of projecting our own emotions on our kids. It can happen, but we want to be aware. It's a great question, and the other word that you were pointing to, Abby, was fear. It's okay, I think, to talk about your emotions. They're valid. But as the adults in the room, we have to be responsible for how they're communicated. And there are times when, Abby, you may need to take a timeout. Put yourself in timeout. I had to put myself in timeout today with Nora. That whenever I'm feeling frustrated or I'm having, when I can tell my own anxiety level is topping out, as best I can, to take a minute. If it's go for a walk. I have a dog that likes to be walked all the time, so I take him for a walk. You really have to. That puts us into this space of self-care. Parents, you have to care for yourself. The degree that you're caring for yourself has a direct correlation to how well you're able to care for other people. So you really want to be aware of how you're feeling before you come to your kids with difficult conversations. They can take it. Kids can be present and participate in difficult conversations around sadness. If you're feeling sad, you can share that, but be aware of how you're sharing it.
Yeah, and I loved your example of we need time out. I mean, I think it's okay. I was actually talking to a mom this week whose kid told a neighbor, "Oh yeah, my mom goes and sits in her closet when we're really driving her crazy." And that's okay. Kids are learning then that sometimes we need to step away and take a deep breath and pray, read scripture, listen to worship music, whatever helps fill you back up. That's not a bad thing. That's a good skill for them to learn too.
Yes.
We've got another question. We're going to pop up here from Chris. What role can prayer play in emotional health?
Prayer plays a huge role in emotional health, and we all have that tool in our tool belt. And I would say becoming very comfortable praying with your kids is it's super important. It's not always easy, but once you begin doing it, once you kind of break the seal on it, it becomes easier. And Paul talks about pray without ceasing. I think we're all praying a lot more in this difficult time. And if you can set up times, it's kind of the self-care piece. There's no better self-care than praying and turning to the Lord and surrendering some of the pain and the frustration you might be feeling, and then being able to model that to your kids and sharing that experience with them is it's centering. And the Lord heals. He wants to heal us, and he wants to bring us peace. And he does it in different ways. Sometimes it comes right away, and sometimes it's just over the horizon there.
Right. And sometimes parents are reluctant because they feel like they don't know the right words to pray, or they don't know what to say. And I just want to encourage parents who are watching tonight, just sit down and talk to the Lord as you would talk to another friend. And that's the best model for our kids. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You can start tonight as you're tucking your kids in, or if they're already in bed, start in the morning by just when you wake up, ask God to give you a good day, or ask God to use you today. And I would love to hear how you're praying with your kids later on, because that is, Chris, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a very important tool. Okay, we have another question. This is from Bethany. Question from her house tonight. How do you speak with kids or anybody about how anxious feelings are a normal reaction to circumstances, but not integral to who they are? Like they're not a scared kid, but they're feeling scared right now.
Yeah. Well, so anxiety, when we talk about anxiety, it's often tied up with fear. Like we use those words interchangeably sometimes. And fear kind of comes in a couple of ways. Fear is an autonomic response. It's a big fancy way of saying it just happens. One way that fear comes on is if you're walking in the woods and you see a bear. Oh, you're gonna experience fear. The difference comes in Bethany, similar to how you said, you're experiencing anxiety, but you're not an anxious kid. It's okay to be fearful of fearful circumstances. And we feel I'll put it myself, I feel uncomfortable sometimes sharing with my kids whenever things are super, super difficult, because I don't want to put a burden of fear on them. But I had a conversation with my son coming home today about he's a little older. He's in the 8th grade, and he was hearing kind of the obnoxious political rhetoric on the arguments on the radio. And I said, yeah, Finn, that's just how it is now. There's a lot of division, and there's a lot of pain, and anger is being discharged in like the public space, the public sphere. So that's an example of being willing to hold on for the ride and say, yeah, things are a little rough right now. And, sometimes things are, they're a little rough before they get better.
Right.
Yeah.
And now is an opportunity, while our kids are still in our homes, for us to train them on what they do when plans change, or things are unpredictable, or we have to stay in our house for months at a time.
Sure.
When we met the other day, when you trained staff, one of the things you said that really made a big impact on me is during COVID, you said, don't should yourself. Mm-hmm. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So an example, yeah. So don't should on yourself or on anyone else.
Yeah.
And what that looks like is, we can really hold ourselves accountable for our productivity and even how we react to circumstances in an unfair way. There's nothing about the current state of affairs we all find ourselves in, with quarantine, a financial downturn for this year that actually happened on February 20th, which is weird. February 20th, 2020, is a major downturn. The racial unrest that's happening. There's no good news when you turn. So all those things, and then I get frustrated with myself, that I didn't make it to the gym last week. You should be going to the gym. I should be setting up, on my normal routine. And really, it's not a fair standard to hold myself to. When I take a breath and I take a minute and realize that, I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. Give myself grace and grace to other people. I certainly don't want to be telling my wife or my kids what they should be doing now in comparison to what they were doing in normal circumstances. They may not be do as well in school this semester. Okay. Yeah. They may struggle in ways that I'm unprepared for. I feel it's a mistake to offer a correction. Well, no, you should be actually performing better or achieving more.
Yeah, and I think it's especially good advice not to should on your spouse.
Yes.
That is not helpful.
It never goes well.
No. Shannon Starkey Taylor, she said, instead of should I like asking myself, I wonder if I chose X, what would have happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shannon, I like that. I wonder if it's more graceful to yourself and other people. And when you get stuck in the should cycle, we're always given the opportunity to try again. And that's it. That's something I'm trying to keep on the front of my mind with Nora and Finn is, personally, like if I'm not making it, if I'm not hitting marks that I thought I should be hitting, I try to say, well, I can try again tomorrow, and hopefully I'll do a little better. And just to encourage my kids that rather than to come down with a level that's not graceful, that you didn't measure up or you didn't do the thing, to be able to say, well, there's always tomorrow. You have another shot at it.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And let's teach our kids how to learn from our mistakes, and rather than feel condemned. I mean, I always say, well, don't feel condemnation. I mean, maybe you're being convicted of something. Maybe you're realizing when I sit in the house and eat potato chips all morning and scroll through my social media, I am not going to feel as good in the afternoon.
Right.
As if I got up in the morning and took a walk and came home and ate oatmeal. Mm-hmm. It's just a good way to change our behavior. Right. Well, Brian, we're nearing the end of our time. And so I'd love to know, what final thoughts do you have for our parents who are watching?
Mm-hmm. Final thoughts. Parents out there, I want to offer you some affirmation. Your parents, because the Lord has blessed you with children, and He's affirmed you as parents just by the fact that you have them. My prayer for you is that you're graceful with yourself, that you offer yourself second chances and third chances and fourth chances, and understand that this time next year, it could all be different in terms of our life circumstances and the difficult compare to the difficult circumstances we're in. So it's been great. I really enjoyed this, and have a good night.
Thank you. We really appreciate you coming, Brian. And yeah, I think we as parents are so hard on ourselves. And a lot of times we look at when we do something and we look back on it and we think we didn't do it that well, instead of looking at we have years and years ahead of us in relationship with that kid, we get stuck on the one bad thing we did. And I think that really keeps us from being the best versions of ourselves that God intended us to be. Yeah. So I love that, looking forward. And so would you mind praying for our parents as we close?
Sure, I'd love to.
Thanks, Brian.
God, we're grateful to you for this time together and for you giving us the blessing of being parents, the blessing of children. God, I pray for each person who participated in this tonight and was able to take a half an hour and be present. Lord, they did that because they want more of you, and they're turning to answers that only you can provide. It's hard to be a parent. I don't know how to do it without you, Lord. It's hard to be a husband. I'm counting on you to help me do that as well. And God, I know that every person on this call needs you. So Lord, we're going to surrender to you and trust you. And I pray that as we go into this week, that you would bless our homes with joy and with grace. Amen.
Amen. And I was gonna say, parents, you're enough, but actually, without the Lord, you are not enough. But with the Lord, parents, you are enough. You can do it. And I'm just so appreciative of you being here, Brian. And next week, Wednesday at 8:30, we're going to have Steve Andre, who is a therapist, and he's going to talk about addiction. So many people are dealing with addiction to porn, alcohol, all kinds of different things as parents and as kids. So he's going to be here to talk about that. So parents, we look forward to seeing you next week. Good night.
Good night.